My daughter got her first job delivering newspapers. The second week, she was stopped by our neighbor, who yelled, "I don't want her creeping around my property." She hadn't even stepped on his lawn. The next day, her entire bike was missing. A week later, it showed up on Facebook Marketplace, spray-painted a different color, but unmistakably hers. The seller? His cousin. When I confronted them, they laughed and said, "Prove it." So I did. What my daughter had hidden inside the bike's handlebars turned this from petty theft into full-blown criminal charges. We live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Not the Amish countryside you see on postcards, but the edge of town where the suburbs start turning into cornfields. It's quiet most days. You hear lawnmowers, dogs barking, kids yelling about nothing on trampolines. Just normal stuff. We moved here 8 years ago after I got divorced. Bought a small house in a neighborhood called Oak Hollow. Good schools, nothing fancy, but safe. That's what I cared about most. Safe for Riley. Riley's my daughter. She's 13 now, but she's always been a little older than her age. The kind of kid who'd rather tinker with something than scroll through her phone. Always asking how things work. She's had a fascination with bikes since she was 10. And I mean really into them. Not just riding, fixing, painting, even customizing. Her and my dad, her grandpa, had that in common. The summer before this all happened, Riley found an old Schwinn at a garage sale a few blocks away. Rusty, dented, chain busted. She bought it for $10 with her own savings. She and her grandpa spent weeks restoring it. They cleaned it up, replaced the wheels, greased everything, painted it bright blue with white accents. It looked amazing when it was done. She rode that thing like it was a Mustang. Then fall rolled around, and Riley wanted a job. Nothing serious. Just something to earn a few bucks. One of the neighbors down the road worked for the Lancaster Daily and said they were looking for local delivery help. So, Riley started a paper route. 3 mornings a week, up before sunrise. She'd load her bike basket, toss the papers, and be home in time to get ready for school. The first week was great. She was excited, proud. Woke up early without me even asking. She liked the routine. It made her feel grown up. That didn't last long. About 10 days into the job, she came home from her morning route looking shaken. She didn't say much at first. Just sat at the kitchen table, barely touched her cereal. I asked, "Everything okay?" She nodded, then shook her head. I gave her a second. Finally, she said, "Mr. Wexler yelled at me." I paused. "What do you mean yelled?" "He came out of his house when I was putting the paper in the box. He started yelling that I shouldn't be on his property. But I wasn't even on his lawn." I stayed on the sidewalk. Jim Wexler, our neighbor, lives right next door. Always had to stick up his ass, excuse the language. Doesn't smile, doesn't wave. Complains about kids being too loud, dogs barking, trash cans left out too long. You know the kind. The guy who stands behind his blinds and watches everything like he's the sheriff of the street. I was furious. Riley's shy. She's never once gotten in trouble at school. Never even talks back to me. And now this grown man is out there scaring her while she's just trying to do her job? That evening, I walked over to his place. I didn't want trouble. I just wanted to clear things up. He answered the door with the chain still on. "Yes," he said like I was interrupting something important. "I think there was a misunderstanding this morning. My daughter said she was snooping. I told her not to come near my property. She wasn't snooping. She's delivering papers. She never even stepped on your lawn." He didn't even blink. "Don't want her near my house. That's it." I started to argue, but he shut the door. Just like that. I stood there for a minute. Honestly, I wanted to kick the damn door in. But I walked home. I told Riley not to worry. That we'd just skip his place from now on. But 2 days later, Friday morning, Riley came home crying. My bike's gone. It had been sitting by the porch, like always. Right under the motion light. We checked the ring cam. Nothing. Whoever took it came during one of those weird 15-minute gaps when the battery had died. We must have forgotten to recharge it. Perfect timing. I called the police, filed a report, gave them the make, model, and color. But I already knew how that would go. No witnesses. No camera footage. They took the report, promised to keep an eye out. And that was that. Riley was crushed. She started doing her paper route on foot, even though it took twice as long. I offered to drive her. She refused. She's tough like that. But I could see it in her eyes every morning, walking the same streets where some thief had taken the bike she built with her grandpa. A week went by. I was up late one night scrolling Facebook Marketplace, just killing time. And there it was. Same frame. Same cracked front basket. Spray painted a dull black, but I could still see a hint of blue underneath. It was her bike. My heart started racing. The listing said, "Used bike. Good condition. $75 OBO. Location, Lancaster, 3 miles away." The seller's name? Rick Wexler. I clicked the profile. One public photo looked like Jim's cousin. I'd seen him at barbecues years ago before everyone stopped inviting the Wexlers to anything. I called my friend Tony. He's a big guy, former cop, now works private security. Told him what was going on. We agreed to meet Rick the next day and play dumb. Pretend I was just a buyer. We met in a parking lot behind a laundromat. Rick pulled up in a beat-up pickup with the bike in the bed. He pulled it out and leaned it against the tailgate. "Good condition," he said. "Rides smooth." I cleaned it up. I kept my cool. "Where'd you get it?" "Found it near the mall dumpsters," he said. "Figured someone tossed it." I leaned down, looked at the frame. There it was, same dent on the front fender. The grip tape Riley had added to the handlebars was still there, just partially covered in black spray. I stood up. "This bike belongs to my daughter." He froze. Just for a second. Then he laughed. "What are you talking about?" "It was stolen from our porch last week." "Look, I don't know anything about that." "I've got photos. A police report." "You really want to go down this road?" He shrugged. "Prove it." I stared at him. And then I smiled. "Okay, I will." Because what he didn't know was that Riley and her grandpa had hidden something inside that bike. A USB drive. Tucked into the handlebar tube, behind the end caps, wrapped in plastic and sealed tight. They called it their secret project. On that USB? Photos of the restoration. Videos of Riley painting the frame, sanding the wheels. Her talking to the camera, holding the newspaper she delivered every morning. Grandpa's voice in the background. A scanned handwritten note with the bike's serial number and the date they finished building it months ago. I gave it all to the cops. And that's when things really started unraveling. So I handed everything over to Officer Mancini, the one who took our original report. I brought the USB, the printed photos, the scanned note from Grandpa, even a side-by-side comparison of the bike before and after the spray paint job. Mancini looked at the drive, then looked at me. "This is pretty solid. You think it's enough?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "It's better evidence than we usually get in bike theft cases." He took it seriously, which was a small relief. He said they'd follow up with a visit to Rick. I didn't know how fast they'd move, but I didn't have to wait long. That same night, I saw a patrol car parked outside Jim Wexler's house. 2 cops standing at the front door. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see Jim's arms flailing like he was losing it. I got a text from Tony around 11 p.m. "They're looking into other thefts on your street." Someone finally stepped forward and said Jim stole their ladder 2 months ago. This is turning into something. That's when I realized it wasn't just us. The next few days were a blur. 3 more neighbors filed reports. The Hendersons missing their lawn furniture. The Gwynns missing a generator. Even old Mr. Becker across the street said his snowblower vanished last winter. Everyone had just assumed they misplaced stuff. Or that some teens took it. Nobody thought to look next door. But now that people were talking, the pattern was clear. Officer Mancini came back with a warrant. They found the blue paint can in Jim's shed. And guess what else they found? The original license plate that had been zip-tied to the Schwinn when Riley first got it. It had her name carved in the back. Jim had pulled it off and tossed it in a bin like it was trash. They also found a notebook. Jim had kept a list. Dates, descriptions, even rough sketches of items he took. Like trophies. One entry said, "Blue bike, porch, early AM, will need to paint." That was all the cops needed. They arrested Rick first for receiving and trying to sell stolen goods. He tried to deny it, said he didn't know. But the Facebook Marketplace profile, the messages, and the video footage we had from our meetup buried him. Then came Jim. They charged him with multiple counts of theft, conspiracy, and possession of stolen property. The cops let him out on bail the next day, but the damage was done. Word spread fast. It started with whispers, then the HOA had an emergency meeting. I didn't go. I didn't need to. By the weekend, someone had spray-painted thief across Jim's mailbox. Trash bags showed up on his lawn, ripped open. I'm not saying I condone that kind of thing, but I didn't lose any sleep over it either. But here's where it gets complicated. One night, Riley and I were out walking, just going to get ice cream. She stopped in her tracks outside the Wexler house. Jim was standing there on his porch, staring at us. Not angry. Just tired. His face sagged like he hadn't slept in days. And then he said something that caught me off guard. "You should have just come to me. We could have talked." Riley's hand gripped mine so hard it hurt. I turned to him. "I did," I said. "You slammed the door in my face." He didn't say anything, just turned and walked inside. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. 3 days later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, scribbled on the front. Inside? Photos. Of Riley, walking her paper route, in the early morning, taken from behind a window or through blinds. Some from behind a tree. They were blurry, but they were her. I called the police. Showed them everything. They took it seriously. Said it could be harassment, intimidation. They didn't have proof it was Jim, but who else would do that? The cops went back to his house. And that's when they discovered something darker. 2 detectives showed up at Jim's house with a second warrant, this time not just for stolen goods, but possible stalking. Jim didn't resist. He opened the door, calm. Too calm, they said later. They searched his house top to bottom. Bedroom, garage, basement. That's where they found it. A small storage closet, locked from the outside. Inside, they discovered a corkboard full of papers. Photos. Handwritten notes. Old newspaper clippings. And on the center of the board? A printed map of our street, with red X's on every house that had filed a theft report, including ours. Riley's name was written in all caps across the bottom corner of the map, underlined 3 times. That was it. That's when everything shifted. The police stopped calling it a theft case. They started calling it an obsession case. They took Jim into custody again this time, no bail. The detective called me personally that night. He said, we're not sure what his end goal was, but he had detailed observations. Times Riley left the house. Which direction she walked. How long she spent at each stop. He'd been watching her since day 1 of her job. I felt sick. We had assumed he was just a grumpy old thief. But now it looked like he'd been watching kids on this block for years. Maybe not doing anything yet, but watching, tracking, cataloging. The next day, Child Protection Services came knocking. Not on me. On Jim's cousin Rick. Turns out, Rick had 2 nephews who stayed with him on weekends. Boys 11 and 9. Now his laptop was seized. We didn't get the full details right away, but the neighborhood caught wind fast. Rick packed up and disappeared. Nobody saw him after that week. Jim stayed in jail, waiting for trial. And then, as if this story couldn't twist any more, Riley told me something else. Something I never saw coming. We were sitting in the living room, just the two of us. She was quiet for a while, then finally said, "Dad, when I was riding my bike those first couple weeks, before it got stolen, I used to hear someone behind me." I turned to her. "What do you mean?" "Not every day. Just sometimes. Like a car rolling real slow. I'd turn around and it would speed up and turn the corner." "You never told me that." "I didn't want to scare you. I didn't think it was anything. But now, I think maybe it was him. Or Rick. I don't know." I felt like the ground was opening under me. All this time, I'd been focused on the bike. On the theft. I didn't realize my daughter had been in danger. Real danger. Not just from a thief, but from men with warped ideas about control. Ownership. Watching kids and calling it snooping when they stood on a sidewalk. And yet, the one thing that saved her, the thing that cracked everything open, was that USB stick. That tiny piece of plastic she'd hidden just for fun. Her treasure box. The same silly idea that made Jim laugh in my face when I confronted him. The same detail that turned this from one stolen bike into a case the DA was now calling deeply troubling. But it wasn't over. Because 2 weeks later, something else arrived in the mail. A padded envelope. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. And a note that said, "You should be more careful what you leave unlocked." I stared at the note for a long time before I touched the flash drive. My hands were shaking. Riley was upstairs, asleep. I didn't want her to see it, not until I knew what was on it. I locked the front door, closed all the blinds, and turned off the lights. Then I plugged the drive into my laptop. There were 6 files on it. All video clips. Short, 30 seconds to a minute each. I clicked the first one. It was a clip of our house, taken from the street at night. You could see our front porch light and Riley's bike parked right there. The camera zoomed in, then slowly panned to the side yard. The second clip showed someone walking down the street. You could barely see their face, but I recognized Riley's jacket. She was delivering papers. The third video, it made my blood run cold. It was taken from inside a car. You could hear breathing. Heavy, close to the mic. The car followed Riley down the block, just far enough behind that she wouldn't notice. The fourth video was worse. It showed the inside of our shed. Our shed. Someone had been inside, filming. You could hear a zipper. Someone went through Riley's backpack. Quietly. Carefully. Then the video cut off. I ripped the USB out and called the police. I told them I didn't care who was on duty. They needed to get someone here right now. When the detective arrived, I handed him the note and the drive. He watched the clips in my kitchen. Said almost nothing until the last video ended. Then he looked at me and said, "We need to check your house." Now. They swept the property. Found nothing. No prints, no sign of a break-in. But the detective said whoever filmed those videos knew our routines. Knew where we kept things. Knew how to move without being seen. Riley stayed at my sister's place that night. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I got a call from Officer Mancini. His voice was tense. "We found something in Rick Wexler's storage unit." Apparently, Rick had rented a unit 10 miles out of town. Inside, they found more bikes. Tools. Boxes labeled with street names, including our street. But in the very back was a locked footlocker. When they pried it open, they found more flash drives. Dozens. And photos. Hundreds of them. Some were of people. Kids. Some were of houses. Routes. Timetables. Notes about patterns and entry points. The worst part? There were notes about Riley. Going back before she even started delivering papers. Notes about what time she came home from school. Which days I worked late. When the blinds in her room were open, Rick and Jim weren't just petty thieves. They were predators. Observers. Waiting for something. But they made one mistake. They underestimated a 13-year-old girl who knew how to hide a USB in her bike handlebars. That single decision tore open everything they were trying to hide. Rick was arrested again. This time with serious charges. Not just theft. Not just stalking. But attempted endangerment of a minor. Evidence tampering. Criminal surveillance. Jim never made it to trial. 2 weeks before his court date, he was found in his jail cell. Hung himself with a torn bedsheet. They ruled it a suicide. No note. Just silence. I won't pretend I felt sorry for him. I did feel something. But it wasn't sadness. It was rage. Rage at how close they got. At how long they'd been watching. At how blind I'd been. And yes, maybe I made a mistake too. I should have taken more time checking our cameras. Should have listened when Riley said she heard things behind her. I should have trusted my gut the first time Jim slammed the door in my face. But we got lucky, because Riley didn't just fight back. She outsmarted them. And now? The whole neighborhood changed. Kids aren't allowed out alone anymore. Neighbors actually talk. Share information. Watch out for each other. And Riley? She got a brand new bike. But she still keeps the old Schwinn in our garage. Repainted. Cleaned. With the USB still tucked inside the handlebars. Just in case. Because now she knows, sometimes monsters don't look like monsters. Sometimes they look like your quiet neighbor next door. But if you stay smart, stay alert, and don't let them scare you, you can take them down. Piece by piece. USB by USB.